faithful and as accurate as you can, with the people you work with.
Right. So like in the credits, you are credited with Ori Russo as being like co-mixers on these tracks,
Right.
this new No Go Era's record, and I thought that was so interesting. And I guess I just wanted to know what's involved in that, and like what do you just like receive? Even like in stupid terms, like do you just like receive their Pro Tools files and then you kind of go in there?
All of it was like in Ableton, It wasn't even in Pro Tools.
Yeah. That makes more sense, actually.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a project that's really, really hard even to take out of the program where it was created in, because all the production is kind of sound design and engineering, and a lot of it is really great, but it doesn't need to be for more stuff to be done. It needs for the stuff that was done to be more accurate. So you really have to go inside the project and adjust things and try things. For it to go. So it doesn't, these kind of things don't leave their DAW very well,
Right. Yeah. That's what I was suspecting, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ori is really a fantastic producer and a great mixer on his own, But I think they've been through so much with these songs because they write them together and they create them together that he really could use, like an extra set of years and someone to help him refine it a little bit more, because he's so involved in it,
Yeah. That sounds like with me, if I'm mixing a track, by the end of the mix, I have no more objectivity anymore, which is kind of why I need a mastering engineer, right? To say like, no, this was good or this wasn't good, to have that last set of years, where you have no objectivity anymore.
Yeah, I totally feel you. That's why I also think it's like important to not take too long when working, like to mix relatively fast. Because if you hear something and then you start a process of getting used to what it is, and I think you should respond like really quickly to your instincts and see where they take you, and then later you can fine tune that, but you should like move pretty quickly when doing things, because after a day or two you're not as fresh as you used to, and you might need like a larger break if you want to regain that objectivity again.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's actually what Noam Levenberg, who recommended I speak with you, talked about in his episode. He talked about he has like this golden 30-minute window where he's like, if I can get like the bulk of the mix going in 30 minutes,
that's crazy.
I'm set. And like he's so selective of how quickly he works on different tracks. He's like, good enough, next. Like, so he gets those impulses out.
Yeah, that sounds all right.
I think for me, it's like 2 hours. I don't know. For everybody, it's like a little different. But there's something to be said about that initial, like you said, what your gut tells you.
I try to separate the prep work and the actual mix always. I do like to do it on my own. I do like to prep the stuff myself. So that makes me a little more familiar with like the song and the structure and the stuff that's playing. But I want to take like an hour and a half. When I get the session, I do everything. I color everything like I like. I edit what I need to edit, and then I close it. And then I come and I work on the song another day when I can just like go from the start. I don't have to spend a lot of energy, doing technical things. And then I do that for a couple of hours, and I leave it, and I probably open it the next day, So I gain another point where I'm fresh, and that works for me. I usually don't, mix a song and finish it on the same day today, which I guess at the old days that used to be how they do it, because of recall and all that. But I think it's really, really great to be able to gain more objectivity by separating it into smaller chunks.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that too. Like, but after 2 hours, your ears are already toast. So, totally. Like, how do you expect to make it better after that?
Yeah. No, I think everyone has, like, their tricks about how they do it. I wonder, how do you do it? Like, what are your tricks to maintain, your freshness when working on something?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much exactly what you said. If I can do, the prep work the day before and get things in my template, and then if I can do it between, let's say, 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. the next morning, I hope that by the end of by 10 a.m., 80% of the mix is there. And at that point, I'll probably send it off for some feedback and say, like, this is the direction. Like, should I fine tune it? Or do we need to change it up? That's kind of where I'm at. Very similar to you, actually. And I've heard like a spectrum of different answers on this show of like, people who say like mix. There was a guy named Justin Long from Barefoot Recording in Los Angeles who told me it's like mix one is my product, so I make it as perfect to my ears as I can make it, and then after that, it's a service. So whatever the artist wants, I will change.
That's good. That's really ballsy.
It's ballsy, but for me that wouldn't work. For me, I need a little bit more of that. Like, here's a bit of work. Here's 80%. What do you think?
Yeah. Are they very like stylistic? That guy, I'm not familiar with his work.
Justin, he works on I guess like rock and pop rock kind of stuff for the most part. Yeah, I think it depends. I guess styles matter, and like collaborative mixes like you're doing also would change things also, I imagine. Like, I don't know, when I'm working with a producer, let's say, on a mix, then it's very collaborative. It's very like, okay, I just did this, what do you think? And like, I want the producer's feedback because like they clearly had a big part in the way it's going to sound. So that's how I like to see it.
Do you work with them together, or you're like in the same room usually, or?
No, not usually. No. Well, it's been a while since I've been in the same room with anybody.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But yeah, usually I mix by myself. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. Most of the time, I spend a lot of time by myself, and then I meet up with whoever and do stuff together. I think that's really important to me because when people produce their music and they come to you for mixing, they know it really, really well. And if you just sit with them from the start, you're not as familiar with everything, with all the details and all the things that it could be. They have like an edge over you, or not an edge, but there's a difference in the experience of the song. So I like to spend some time with it alone and try different things. And then when we meet, I also know the song and I have more to offer. And even if they didn't like my initial direction, I can say, okay, cool. I have this also. I thought this could go in that direction as well. What do you think about that? So that's really important to me to be able to spend some time alone and really dive into a song.
The discovery process of the song.
Right.
And it's also when the artist is in the room, like they know the song so well and they're listening to something very specific, and you might be working on something completely different than what they're listening to. They're like, why is the vocal, so bright? And you're like just working on the guitars or whatever it is.
Yeah, and you also want to be, when you're free and you're alone, you can be really experimental. You can do like really outrageous things, even if you tone them down for a second. And when there's more people in the room, especially if they're very sensitive to their product, to their song, to whatever, you tend to be a little more tame. And I think that's a shame because you can lose something really, fresh or inspiring that you wouldn't do otherwise. It's just really a lot of fun to try stuff and not, be inspired by what comes out. I have a bunch of like guitar pedals who are chained to my DAW, and sometimes I just like send stuff out, and I'm not even sure what's on, but something comes out of it. Like it can be like pitch shifters and delays and distortion, and sometimes that inspires you, or that gives you an idea, and it's totally random. And and you can experiment with stuff and just get stuff to excite you or to interest you. And if you're very tame in your approach, you don't let stuff surprise you, and you might miss out on some stuff.
Yeah. I love that. Reminds me of you kind of see the interviews of like the old school guys, like from back in like the the 70s and the 80s, and they used to just like leave up their consoles and they'll put the new song through the exact same mix and see if something interesting would happen. It's like random, but maybe something amazing happens. Yeah,
totally. I had a little bit of that experience, because I did get to work on a console for a couple of years, and that's fun. That's really fun to have stuff, re-energize you in that way. That it's not all about what you do with it. Like, random stuff is great. I think, there should be more randomizers, like in plugins or whatever. That you can just put something on and, it just, like, does random stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could like kind of shuffle through presets on like, I don't know, like a Soundtoys plugin or something like that, and maybe that could like, give you an idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I do
You
that
could do
often.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, there's like sometimes when you use in Pro Tools, you have that import session data function.
I've learned about it. I'm a Logic user, but I have heard about this.
There's probably something similar. Like if you can import like track settings and automations and inserts and stuff like that based on it finds tracks who are similarly named. So if everything's the same, it works pretty well. But sometimes it puts like the bass drum channel strip on the vocal or stuff like that, and that can be interesting. So you have you can have like happy accidents like that.
Yeah, I love it. Do you do a lot of outboard stuff in general, or are you mostly in the box?
I think I'm like a hybrid approach kind of guy, but I think even that it's still mostly in the box. I do think today it's important to be like 100% recallable. You need to be able to do revisions on your work. So you need to make sure that you really can, open it another day and it's like 99% the same thing. But I do go out of the box for like trips, with pedals or tape echoes or just regular outboard. I think.
Do you then you print that back in, or do you just kind of leave it?
I think like stuff that's on groups, if there's like a compressor on like a subgroup or on the master, that's obviously you have to recall that and it just goes through it live. But if it's like single tracks or effects, I usually print it once I'm fine with it. And I think that's also like a good practice, because when you do it like with actual outboard gear and you print it and you're not going to be able to tweak that later, you really want to make sure it's at the right spot. You really tweak that a little better, I think, than if it's a plugin that you always have it in the back of your mind that I can tweak that in like a couple of minutes again if I don't like it. And,
it's like good to have that like commitment to the right sound at the right time, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it teaches you, like when I bought like an 1176, I think that really made me know it a little better, what I can do it with, like what I can do with it, what I don't like, how to get it like where I want it, just because I had to print it all the time. So I had like the process of printing it like with wrong settings, like that later I didn't like it and I had to redo it, and then because I had to go through the whole thing, it wasn't just like a small tweak in the plugin that like made me more, I don't know, just like gave me a better feel for it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. It's like if you're going to do it, you're going to do it right. And you're not going to just like, oh, that's good enough for now, and I can come back to that or whatever. Like,
right.
You just know what you want. You figure out how to, and then by doing that enough times, you understand, you just know your gear better.
Yeah. And you also, you pay a price for your mistakes, even if it's just like, having to do it again for another like 5 minutes. You have that like, oh, that was bad. I didn't like that, or that gave me problems like later in some way.
Yeah. Sometimes those big mistakes teach you never to do it again. I was actually just talking to a friend about that recently. It's like the first time I overwrote like a song with the backed up version from the hard drive instead of the new version, and you lost all of your day's work. Wow. That's not going to happen again. Because you made that mistake.
Yeah.
And then when the stakes are higher, you're not going to make that mistake again.
Yeah. Well, I had one of these like instances which was like horrible. I was an assistant, and there wasn't a lot of space on the hard drives, and there was like this jazz band recording, 10 hours straight, and you kept having to delete like, unused tracks or whatever, or takes they didn't keep just to keep the hardest, being able to go. Yeah. And like they opened a new song and we imported like the session data from the one before, and when you do that, sometimes it brings over like the actual data into the new session, And then when you delete
Oh,
unused data, you're deleting unused data for that session, but that data is being used in a different song. So
Oh
I
my
guess